Hi, everybody. Welcome to Solidarity House. It's really nice to see everybody here in this gorgeous space that is filled with love and community and has been for the last 48 hours or so. This is day 3, panel 4, so lots and lots of amazing programming here that touches on so many aspects of our lives and the industry and things that are going on in the world right now, which are very heavy, and I want to acknowledge that. Lots of terror, but also in this space, lots of joy and love and compassion, and I think that's really special. So this panel is titled Centering Job Quality, Family, and Care Considerations as Sustainable Practices in Storytelling. So thinking about job quality, family, caregiving on set and on screen. My name is Vicki Shabo, and I'm with New America's Better Life Lab, the founder and director of our entertainment initiative, which seeks to bring stories to the screen, help storytellers fashion and sell authentic stories about work, family care, and gender equity. And welcome to Solidarity House. It's really my pleasure to be one of the groups that has helped to build and sustain this space. Solidarity House, this is the thing that everybody says before the panel, so I'm going to read it here too. Solidarity House is both a space and a practice, creating meaningful alignment where imagination meets infrastructure and solidarity becomes strategy. This gathering is designed to strengthen our collective capacity to imagine and build the future of independent storytelling and co-design pathways toward a more sustainable and equitable creative future that centers repair, liberation, and sovereignty. Live captioning for this session is available through CODA, which is KODA, a web-based tool accessible on your device. It doesn't require accounts or logins, and our unique links are available via the QR codes posted around the room or on our website at thesolidarity.com/schedule. So as I said, this activation is called Centering Job Quality, Family, and Care Considerations as Sustainable Practices in Storytelling. And we're grateful to have the following folks joining us. They're not sitting in the same order, so I'm just gonna, oh wait, maybe this did work. Anyway, if you guys can just like raise your, whatever, give a wave. First, Cassidy Dimon with FWD-Doc, Chanelle Elaine with Kashif Incubator, Apoorva Chara with All Caps and Take Me Home, and Julian and Justen Turner with DreadHead Films. So let's give a warm welcome. This is an amazing, amazing panel. I want to recognize we've got 3 folks sitting here who have works that they're involved in, that are in the festival, and I think that's really exciting and just a testament to the storytelling that is inclusive of the kinds of things that we're talking about here today. So I'm going to start first. I'm just going to stand here because I've been sitting all day moderating panels. So I'm going to stand for a second and just ask you this question. I want to start with a little bit of the why behind why you're here, why you said yes to this panel when there's so many other things that you could be doing in this hour. And just tell us a little bit, where in the industry you sit and why you decided to say yes, and we'll just go down the line, starting with Apoorva.
Okay. I'm an independent producer. I run a small boutique film production company called All Caps, based out of Los Angeles. I said yes to this panel because my team pitched me. But we'll talk more about it, but our film, Take Me Home, I think, made some really unique and interesting choices around accessibility and evolved how we make films. And so I wanted to share that with the rest of the panelists.
I'm Julian Turner.
I'm Justen Turner.
Yeah, we're the Turner brothers. We co-own DreadHead Films. Have a project called Freelance in the episodic categories, premiering on Tuesdays, comedy. And yeah, we said yes because freelance is about job quality and the sustainability and being able to kind of make growth and grow in your career, but also the things and the factors that everyone has to, pay attention. The family factor, jobs, and being able to have to pay rent at the same time is the premise of the show. So this aligns perfectly.
Yeah, and it's a little bit autobiographical and, pulled from our own experiences and what we've seen in the industry. And we really just wanted to bring levity to that. And, that's something we aligned with is, that familial aspect of not only how we shoot and treat our projects, but the topics that we're talking about in our project. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hey, my name's Chanelle Elaine. I sit right outside of what we like to call the Hollywood industrial complex. And I'm the founder and visionary architect of story and possibility at Kashif. And Kashif has a nonprofit called Kashif Incubator. And then we have a production house, and we have the Joyful Future Fund so that we can greenlight our own films.
Awesome. My name is Cassidy Dimon. I am Executive Director of FWD-Doc, which is Filmmakers with Disabilities. We are a membership organization, an advocacy organization with over 1,300 members of disabled filmmakers and our allies in 38 different countries. And our work really aims to uplift authentic disabled stories, make filmmaking more accessible for disabled filmmakers. And we really believe that accessibility is tied into a practice of community and care. And that when you make things accessible, you make it more accessible for everyone, not just maybe the disabled person that you were accommodating in that moment. So this is a perfect kind of conversation. I think accessibility and disability often gets put on another place, and bringing it into a conversation of community. Disability is the one identity that all of us, I am already disabled, but all of you will join at one point in your life. And caregiving is a big part of that. So that's why we're here.
That's amazing. And I think to underscore, all of us have family relationships. All of us have caregiving needs. 130 million people in this country, and I would guess almost everyone in this room, have somebody that they are caring for, a child that they're caring for. This is universal. And yet we often treat issues around work and family, or needing care responsibilities, or needing jobs that accommodate the lives that we have outside of work as side issues, or nice to haves, or something that you're lucky enough to attain if you work hard enough, and not something that you deserve. And that's what we're really talking about here, both as an industry practice and as a cultural practice writ large. I want to give a shout out to a couple of folks in the room, the team from Caring Across Generations back there, which worked on Take Me Home, Apoorva, and Akima Brown, who runs Real Families for Change over here. And I think that this just speaks to the fact that this is larger than this panel, and it is larger than, I think there's more of us out there that want these things and that feel scared to ask for them, or feel like it's, as Cassidy was saying, like an accommodation rather than something that should be central for everyone. And so hopefully through this panel today, we'll start to bring some hope and some practical guidance about how to make sets more accessible, how to make practices in the industry more accessible, and also how the who of telling stories reflects the different kinds of stories that are seen on screen. So Apoorva, I want to start with you. Take Me Home is a really, really beautiful film. It's funny, it's grounding, it's serious, and it's so relatable. And I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about the film and the family behind it, and then just how caregiving had to be centered on set and how it plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. So Take Me Home is a directorial debut from writer-director Liz Sargent. The film is deeply personal to her. She is the middle child of 11 siblings. Her parents are white Midwesterners. They had 4 biological children and then adopted 7, 6 from Korea and several with disabilities. And the film stars her youngest sister, Anna, who plays a version of herself in the film. Anna is a 38-year-old Korean-American adoptee who has a cognitive disability, and in the story is caregiving for her parents who've now aged into disability. And the film explores, through a very, as you said, funny, sensitive family story, the indignities of the American healthcare system. The family behind it is the Sargent family. So, Liz directed her younger sister on set. And what was the third part of your question?
I mean, talk a little bit about how, care is obviously at the center of the film. I think there's an element of work-family conflict in the film with the Alian character.
Yeah.
But also how care practices had to be centered on set in order to make this film that is also about these things.
Absolutely. So Take Me Home is ultimately a caregiving story, right? I think we approached it in a few different ways. It's one, asking the question of who is the caregiver, because Anna herself is a caregiver in the story, and centering care in set practices. So Anna had a caregiver. She had an accessibility coach, accessibility producer, and an acting coach on set. So those were kind of the tools that we put around her so she could have her best experience possible. And this was very much about cognitive accessibility. And the other part of it is that we shot in the director's family home, and her parents had been in the ER just weeks and months prior, and they stabilized themselves, but we provided support so that there were caregivers for her parents so that we could relocate them so that we could film in the home as our primary location.
Wow. Yeah, and I just want to underscore, I mean, it is a caregiving film, but it's a film about family, it's a film about love, it's a film that has so much humor to it in these ways that were just so relatable. So the premiere is tomorrow, it's online after that. But I think it also just speaks to the universality of experience, and also, the evolution of people's relationships and desires over time. So congratulations.
Thank you.
On this, yes. Julian and Justen, I'm going to turn to you, and I was joking earlier that people must just always call you a duo, but you are distinct. You co-directed Freelance, one of you edited, one of you wrote, and I think that's very cool. Also very funny, very relatable, very Gen Z, and sort of the boomer Gen Z tensions. Can you talk, like you when we were prepping, you talked about how your home is also your set, and so family is part and parcel of what you do. It's obviously what you do together in your creative process. It's part of the show. Talk a little bit about what that looks like, sort of what perspectives you're bringing to the screen through this process, both generationally, racially, kind of freelance economy. Talk about that just a bit.
So again, it's kind of it's a little bit autobiographical, and it's about a group of people of color who band together and try to chase their creative dreams outside of what would many consider the major creative hubs. And it's kind of a statement on where the industry is and across many different art forms. So the main character is a filmmaker on his journey to make his first short film, and he's surrounded by his friends who are all pursuing their creative passions in fashion, fitness, sports, and music, and all the entire gamut. And so there's a part of this story that really feels familial in the sense that as young people in the industry, we really have to band together to make our dreams come true, and that it's really not a solo effort.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. We always laugh about how the industry that we were trying to get into growing up from Columbus, Ohio, is completely different now, but it's also it embraces you being able to build those systems where you're at. And so we laugh and say we are an in-house production, but we truly are. I typically write and handle a lot of pre-production. Justen typically edits and handles post-production. We co-direct on set, but also our mom is a producer, and she, we looked up, and she's an accountant, and so we didn't have to count numbers really. And then our father is also a musician, and so we do pretty much everything. And it wasn't until we started to scale that we started to bring people in, and it was literally bringing them into our house. And so Freelance is a reflection of that. What was behind the set was literally in front of the camera, and it's that journey of them trying to figure it out and break into an industry, in a world and in a time where it's 3-4 times more expensive to live, and so it's just grounding that reality and showing that it's possible.
Is there a scene from the film or sort of a moment from filming that stands out to you as sort of encapsulating all of this?
Yes, it's all the whole episode is pretty much that, but I do know our filmmaker is called Freelance, but his name is Lance, and Lance was about to go to his gig, but he got a last second call where he needed to go to his family, and they needed to have an appointment where they took a family photo, and it was all planned, but just showing the reality of you know, a lot of TV shows and content kind of keep things in a bottle, and it kind of keeps the moment insulated, and it doesn't involve parents, it doesn't involve siblings, it doesn't involve the kids. And so just showing the reality of, hey, like, this is not, you know, the day-to-day life of a filmmaker is the same day-to-day life of anyone else, and especially when you're in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, and there's an aspect of, you know, still having your personal family life, you know, alongside your creative and you know, your passions, and how there's really a balance, and you can't really you know, cut out and separate the two, which we kind of want to speak to in a humorous way. If you know which scene we're talking about.
Yeah.
But, you know, everyone in this household, you know, the friend group all has their passions, but so do every member of the family. And so we kind of get a glimpse of, you know, how they interact with each other and how they support each other, you know, even when things aren't going like the smoothest.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And Apoorva, I had meant to ask you, actually, if there was a moment from filming or a scene in the film that you really feel like is the one that encapsulates all of this the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the scene where Emily, Anna's sister in the film, is helping Anna. She's wiping Anna down with shower wipes because Anna, after spoiling the film for folks a little bit, but you know, Anna hasn't taken a shower in a few weeks since her mom has passed, and the conversation though is Anna starts to become curious about the rest of Emily's life and if Emily has a boyfriend, and you can see kind of the weight in Emily's eyes and in the silences of her being really torn between the rest of her life and then her family and what her responsibilities and her obligations are. Yeah. And of course so much love, and she wants to be there, but you know, it's how do you choose between two parts of your life?
Right. And there's a scene also where there's sort of this conversation about policy at her workplace and what she's allowed to do. And then you can also see the conflict where, like, she wants to get back to her life, but also her life is in that house.
Also here, yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciated that scene as well, and that sort of set of scenes. Chanelle, I'm going to turn to you, zooming out from Sundance here, proper a bit to your work at Kashif. You know, when we were chatting, you talked a lot about kind of the need to standardize practices around childcare and fair pay, and just creating practices that make it possible for people to work in this industry and to create and to make art, while also recognizing that they're full human people who need to pay bills and be cared for and take care of others. And I'm wondering, you know, if you can talk a little bit about the work that Kashif Film Incubator has done, and also the difference that you think these practices have made in the productions that you've worked on.
Okay, thank you. You know, the first thing that I want to say in terms of Kashif Incubator is that, you know, we've come up in a society that tells us that we need to be starving artists, that we are, you know, that we need to be by ourselves, that we need to pay our dues and work for free. And we don't believe any of that at Kashif. We believe in resourced artists. We believe in being able to provide childcare and transportation and stipends so that artists aren't having to choose between the craft that they love and providing for their family. And we understand that being able to take away some of the barriers that we often have to face as BIPOC people, as LGBTQIA people, as disabled, as veterans, as just people who have to live in this particular United States of America, as it's so called. You know, there's a lot that we have to go through in order to just be able to, like, survive. And so what we are doing, right? We're taking try out of our lexicon as much as possible. What we are doing is providing those resources on a base level. And in terms of artists, we're also not looking for, like, the most polished work. We're looking for the possibility. We're looking for the ambition that is in the kernel of a story, and maybe you need the proper support to actually realize that idea. So many of our artists are connected and mentored by more experienced directors or cinematographers. Like we also don't have to go it alone, right? So we're always like thinking about that, and we do this in service of wanting to change culture, change the narrative, allow for our stories to be there so that they can be the connective tissue for us to see each other, like the interbeings that we are. That's not my word, that's Thich Nhat Hanh's word. And so what we also know, in order for us to like be the organization that wants to impact artists that are sitting here, or more broadly in the community, is that we also have to change ourselves. The only way that this is going to be successful is if we are actually nurturing ourselves. And so we have to be an organization that people actually want to come to and be nurtured at as well. And so we are very comfortable with love in the workspace. We're very comfortable talking about having we have a 4-day work week, and it's not 40 hours in 4 days. It's 32 hours. We have collective rest 3 times a year where the whole office is closed, which is different than vacation and knowing that everything's going on and piling up on your desk and all of that. We have a $500 unrestricted mental health stipend. We give it to you. We don't care how you spend it. Maybe you need to spend $500 on going to a ton of movies, or whatever it is. It's not our business, right? However way you're taking care of yourself, and what we and also. I say I'm the founder, but we have a founding team, and we want everyone to be a leader within the organization, and we want to have generative conflict, and we want to learn from each other, and so that's what we're pouring into in the organization, so that we have the ability to pour that into the larger community. And I'll say one other thing before I give up the mic. That what that also means is that what is my relationships with my family, right? Like we're talking about like community and solidarity and what that looks like, in these rooms and different spaces. But like if I'm not talking to my mom correctly, right? If I'm not listening to my dad, if I can't like be there for my brother, if I can't, then it's not going to work. So like, what is my foundation upon my solidarity within my own family, so that therefore I can bring it to myself, I bring it to myself first, I bring it to my family, and then I can bring it to my workplace and to the community.
Amazing. Can you talk a little bit, just before you give up the mic, about a place where you've seen a difference of these practices in the productions that you've worked on, in the art that you've done?
I mean, really, I'd like to talk about in that scenario, Vicki, is our most recent. We did what we called the directing breakdown workshop, which was one of our longest and most intense workshops that we did, and it asked a lot of our cohort. And what we did not expect is that they put together a video of love and thank you back to us about like what receiving the workshop, but also just the way in which like we were able to engage with them meant for how they see themselves within the art form, and how they see themselves in being able to see where they can go. And that was really, like, we just didn't expect to get that in our inboxes. And I'd love to share it with you all sometime, because it's just like so beautiful for us.
That's really, really, yes, quite beautiful. Cassidy, you talked here, you talked in our prep, about accessibility as an industry standard rather than as an accommodation. And I think that's a really powerful construct for thinking about things that really make life easier for all people. I'm thinking just in my own life, like I've started watching Netflix with subtitles because the sound is weird. I'm like, I don't think I have like a disability, but just being able to process information in different ways, being able to have seats available, other things, hearing accessibility, practices. I'm curious sort of what does it mean in practice in the work that you do to make accessibility thoughtfulness a standard? How does that show up? And sort of what's been the most valuable part, would you say, of normalizing inclusion like that?
Thank you for the question. I mean, it's a big one, right? I think that, the disability community has been kind of gate-kept from filmmaking for a very long time because there's a stigma that not only is disability lessened, but it's expensive. To work with disabled people is expensive. And that's reducing people to a dollar amount, right? And that's just not true. And what we have found, we have released many tool guides and resources for accessible filmmaking, which you can find on our website. But to me, it's that kind of taking the person away from the role. It's taking the human out of the equation when we reduce someone to a budget line item. And so, we look at making filmmaking more accessible through practices of community care, right? If we look at if we can budget ahead of time for an 8-hour workday, which means we have maybe a longer shoot schedule, but that means people with children might get to go home and have dinner with their families, people that are caregiving for their parents. It makes it more accessible. Ramps on set, right? Might help a wheelchair user access their job, but it might actually cut down on your load in and load out because your production team is not having to load cases up and down the stairs, right? So these are just like small examples of how things that we think are accessibility end up benefiting the entire crew. But also we think about distribution and access to films, to your point around captioning, audio description. Captions serve so many people. I am deaf in my left ear. My partner is a non-native English speaker. We watch everything with captions. It helps her understand. It helps me understand. And at a time when everyone is craving to find audiences, 1 in 4 Americans identify as having a disability. Not releasing your media accessible is cutting out on a huge part of the population, right? So again, accessibility, benefiting you as a filmmaker by expanding your audiences. But I do want to touch a bit on what you were saying, because I think that fundamentally we operated as a volunteer group. We are 1 year into being an actual nonprofit, and we want to be the model of saying we want to be able to hire disabled people, pay them a living wage, offer full benefits, 4-day work weeks. We also close down 3 times a year. We have unlimited PTO, unlimited sick time. It's about building trust with each other, that we are here to do good work. And the metrics aren't based on some arbitrary productivity in the numbers that our funders always ask us for. It's based on, obviously, the work and our members feeling like things are good, but that our employees are feeling like they get to be full human individuals. And in the nonprofit industrial complex, that is rare, right? I think a lot of folks in nonprofits are used to burning themselves out, working super hard, and nobody is staying at jobs for 5-10 years anymore. Why is that? Like, can we keep people? Can we keep people engaged and then also give them the skills that they need to go on to the next thing and be better? They don't have to stay with us for 10 years. If they're getting what they need from us, they've gotten it and they can move to the next thing, then we've built an environment that allows people to come in, feel like they're gaining experience, but getting to take care of themselves and their families. And that's really important.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, before we move on, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Chanelle, which is there an example from a production that you've worked on or that one of your members has worked on that really like exemplifies sort of a proud moment in putting these practices into action?
Yeah, we don't do production ourselves, but I think one of the things that we also, again, in building this organization are like, we can't be everything to everyone all the time. We need to be in community with other organizations, both just given the fact that the current political environment, given the cuts to public media, lots of things. but also because disability is like a deeply intersectional identity, right? It touches every race, gender, sexual orientation, religion. And so we can never be everything to all of our members. So partnerships are really important. And so we want to be able to provide more skill building opportunities to filmmakers with disabilities. So we've partnered with Multitude Films, which is an amazing, values-aligned documentary production company. They have an established apprenticeship. And so we now have 4 diverse background, diverse disability producers that are incubating their own films with this company. And then they're also getting to shadow on another film and see how another production that's actually working. And then at the end of the year, we will take them to a film festival where they're going to get to pitch their projects to producers. And really, we couldn't do this without collaboration with this production company, with this other film, with a film festival. We don't need to build it all ourselves. We need to be in community with other people.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love the ecosystem that it sounds like you're
Yeah.
developing, and sort of the ripple effects of that. And Chanelle, I want to turn back to you because you mentioned collaboration as being really key to your work as well. I wondered if there were organizations or partners that really come to mind for you as being helpful in this space.
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to just give space for, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, as a filmmaker coming out of grad school, had worked in fashion a lot, and had someone some intern talk to me really nasty, and I was like, not today, Satan, and understood that I don't have to eat, I don't have to work in a dog-eat-dog industry. We can create something, I can be part of something that is about recognizing the humanity of ourselves and how we take care of each other and how we support one another. And honestly, Vicki, when we were on the call, you mentioned Aijin Poo, just the work with Aijin and Kimberly Crenshaw and Tanisha McHarris and Pamela Schiffman, who, they're not here, but they were the people who poured into me to be you can do this differently. And they didn't know that they were doing that. I was just watching them. They weren't in film. They were, but they were hiring me to produce videos for them. And when I made a mistake, in our world, you make a mistake and you may never work again. Right? And in their world, if you make a mistake, if they came up to you and was like, how can we help you? Right? So that, the work that I did started to be born from that. And so now in collaboration with people OTV, right? And 2043, who I'm deeply aligned with, shout out to Solidarity House, Bliss Collective, OTV, Brown Girls Doc Mafia, Transgender Film Center, they poured in and then brought others in to create this space, right? And I want to collaborate with everybody. I'm not just saying that, right? We all have something to pour into each other and to learn from each other and to figure out how we do this in a way that works, that isn't resonant of what we have to shed ourselves of when we're talking about capitalism and corporatism and all of the things that they have taught us and ingrained in us to think that we have to be in the workspace so that we don't think we can be vulnerable, so that we think we don't need to ask questions, that we can't, that we always need to be the smartest person in the room. I love being the dumbest person in the room so I can ask a lot of questions. And so the people who I get to collaborate with, who make that a safe space, who I can say, I really identifying with these trees out here and they're talking to me and that's okay. No one's going to judge me for that. That's who I want to collaborate with. The people that see me as me and that I don't have to show up and perform and code switch and all of that. So for all of you, that I'm willing to collaborate with you and we can do that. And I think that's, that is what we're saying here, that's why you're asking that question, is because like the possibility of that is real, as long as we can shed ourselves of all of the shit that they told us that they thought we needed to show up as, that we don't.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for that. Yeah. So we in this room, I think, are all very aligned around practice, or hope to be aligned around practices and beliefs and how we can put sort of these values into practice. And I think it's probably likely that sometimes those values hit a snag against practicality. Like something on set will come up and you can't do the thing that you wanted to do or offer the hours that you wanted to offer or something else. And in the vein of like helping to understand that mistakes happen or that challenges come up and you have to overcome them, I'm wondering in particular for Take Me Home and for Freelance, are there examples where sort of like something didn't go the way that you hoped in terms of how you were running the set or running the production? What, if you can share what happened and then like how you overcame that or what you took from it for next time, and whoever wants to go first.
Every day was a challenge. We've all been trained to make films a certain way, right? Like you have a script, you break it down, every department knows what things they need to get in order to create the set and what you're shooting that day. We have a shot list, we have dialogue. We had to throw all of that out because we had a lead with a cognitive disability and she cannot remember lines. And we had decided very early on that the process of filmmaking was going to center Anna, right? That was our way of making it creatively and cognitively accessible. So the word that our director likes to use is the word pivot. Every day was a pivot. I like to use surrender because if we kind of let go, if we were like, okay, every I think department has this idea of what their role is supposed to be, of like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do as a production designer. And if you were hung up on those tasks, then I think that's when the friction showed up. If we let go, if we were like, what's around us? What's in the house that we can use to build this scene? That's when like the scene came to life and we succeeded. We were all pitching ideas and throwing lines. We really were, it was a very like generative process. So, but you know, that said, it took us a while to get there. Like there was definitely friction, I think the first few days, because we're trying to like overcome these habits of filmmaking that are so deeply ingrained in us, and to kind of find a new way to work together. It took a little bit of time.
Amazing. Yeah. What about for you all?
Yeah, Freelance for us was a little bit of a unicorn shoot. It was born from the mistakes we made. so luckily, we didn't have those mistakes on set. I feel like we've kind of worked out a well-oiled machine in terms of the community that we do have. But I will say that one of the earliest lessons that we did learn that is a part of Freelance is that pre-production planning kind of prevents that production. Apologies, and we had to learn that. One of the lessons, we were shooting a project. And we were going over time, and we're in Columbus, Ohio. We don't know what's what. We've never been on anyone else's sets. We don't know what the rules are. It's just Justen, my mom, our mom, our family, and we knew we were going into overtime. And at that moment, we had to make a decision of, instead of going and referring to rules, we were referring to what felt right. And so we paused production, and we took time personally to go around to all the crew and get unanimous consent to continue to shoot.
Wow.
And that was just
That's amazing.
naturally, like, these are relationships that we have. We know these people, we've been to these people's houses, we know their kids, we know. And so those are like relationships that now when we go into, planning and going to shooting, these are things that we try to plan ahead. We know the people we work with, we know their dietary restrictions. And even on Freelance, a lot of the guys that, that came, we have a lot of cast here now, but a lot of them had never, met or worked with each other. And we're indie filmmakers, so we can't afford early rehearsal days and script reads and all that. And so just being able to provide a set where it feels familial and people can show up for the first time and be thrown into a scene and not feel like they're pressured and not feel like there's a bunch of people and strangers staring at them and feel like home. So there's an early lesson we learned, and And it's a blessing that we didn't have to learn that on freelance when we were shooting.
For sure. You put that very well.
We can finish each other's sentences too.
Yeah. But I'm curious, like, do you have other examples or like something that came to mind, sort of in this process?
I was thinking of the same exact
Okay.
example. For sure. I mean, at that time we were really young, and it was really a nerve-wracking decision because at the time it felt like a do or die. And after being able to chat with everyone on set, it's not like it was a huge set. We were able to kind of push through that barrier and really establish a greater sense of camaraderie on set. And it was a huge learning experience for us. And as we grow as filmmakers, we're putting more and more into the pre so that we don't have to make as many sacrifices or put anybody in harm's way.
Yeah, and freelance is the result of that preparation. To a point, is when you prepare and you make things accessible, you make things more efficient. So we were able to get this done efficiently in proper time in 4 days, and get people in and out. We shot the whole thing over a weekend.
That's amazing.
And just because we had that efficiency, that ecosystem, the relationships, it was very seamless.
That's really incredible. And you're bringing up sort of this efficiency piece, which obviously has dollar values attached to it. And that sort of leads into the next question that I have. And for any of you who want to answer this, obviously we're sitting here in sort of this indie space in Solidarity House, thinking about how to bring these practices from what is not yet sort of central to mainstream productions into the mainstream. And I'm curious, sort of from each of your perspectives, are there metrics or sort of either qualitative or quantitative arguments to bring to bear that you would make to bigger studios or production companies or sort of big entities in this space that are in the mainstream that you think might be most compelling?
I would say for us, as we feel like we've kind of sat this intersection of indie, but also commercial. So we've seen kind of both sides, but everywhere we've kind of inserted ourselves has shown us that inclusion is an advantage, and including in front and behind the camera. We do a lot of work with non-actors. We do a lot of work with first-time, crew members, first-time people, like we embrace that opportunity. We're young ourselves, so we're never, above providing, those opportunities. And I think it always, the more inclusive things are, it reflects on the screen, and it reflects in accuracy, it reflects in specificity, which makes it broad to the audience.
Yeah, there's a sense of nuance that you can only get through inclusion, especially when you're telling stories about people of color, and it shines in front of the camera and behind the camera, down to lighting, which has always been a big thing for Black people, and so working with our cinematographer and his crew, we've developed a way of working that really helps our talent shine, but also in turn gives opportunity to people of color who want to get into the industry and may not find too many opportunities elsewhere. But yeah, it really does shine through the work, especially behind the camera.
I just add to that in terms of inclusivity and what a strength it can be to a film. Our DP was Indian, our co-producer was a Chinese American adoptee. We had multiple crew members with caregiving stories and or had family members with disabilities, and they were able to bring so much care because they had such sensitivity to Anna and to Liz and the story that we were trying to tell. And the script evolved so much because we were all able to offer our own perspectives. And you can also see that it's almost like doing an audience research data, right? Because we all come from such different backgrounds and we're able to infuse the script with our own perspectives, and it just like makes the story much bigger than it can feel initially. So that's what I would say about inclusivity. And then accessibility and bringing it into studio films or making it a normalized practice. Accessibility is for everybody. Like, and how a film is made is just as important as why we're making it, right? And the impact of that, like, I think our crew members felt so taken care of. There were certain boundaries that we drew. We had a 20-day shoot in Orlando, and it was really hot, and it was really humid, and it was very challenging. And our first AD or folks would come to us and say, well, why don't we do a 6-day shoot this week? And we were like, no, we can't. Like, everyone's bodies are so tired. We physically do not want to put people through this. So I think making sure that the leadership team like really holds those lines instead of saying, all right, let's just push ourselves another day, because that's when accidents happen. Things start to become unsafe physically and mentally. So yeah, I think making sure that we're holding those boundaries and not crossing them in the name of efficiency.
And how would you, so if you were describing that process to somebody who hadn't done this before, kind of how would you, what do you think would be most persuasive in helping them to see like that this is a better way?
Yeah. I mean, I think I would talk about all of the different ways in which accessibility producers work with the creative team. They were supporting us in casting. They were supporting us in location management. They were supporting us in, like really like every stage of the filmmaking, in post-production, right? With our captions and our audio description. And I think to have that second set of eyes and pair of hands and ears, it was such an asset to us. And it's so helpful for the producing team. So even for like leadership and creative executives, I would be like, it is your, what is your responsibility to the film is to provide this as a resource, both for your film team and for the audience members. But know that it's not something that you have to do on your own. There are experts in this field who can support you through it. And I think the results show, like, your film is so much better, your crew is happier. And one of the measures for that qualitative success could be like, are people willing to work with you again? Have you had a good experience with them that they want to continue on this journey of collaboration with you?
That's, yeah, really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Chanelle.
I just want to talk a little bit about, I'm going to go throwback in time again. I was a producer for a Netflix original called First Match. And we filmed that in Brownsville, New York. And in understanding how extractive film productions can be, where they land in a place, they do everything that they're gonna do, and then they pull up shop and they leave, that like what we really wanted to practice was like connecting to the community before we even stepped foot there. And you know, Brownsville, New York is really known as, you know, its reputation is of, you know, this inner city crime-ridden place, and we knew that the people there represented it so much more than that, and that's what we received when we started. You know, we started making connections and talking to people, you know, 6 months before production ever was going to land there. We, you know, a lot of the people that we had as extras, we were on the streets recruiting the members of the community. We were asking the members of the community, you know, all of our locations were there, and you know, we paid the most amount of money that we could, and we made sure that their house looked better than it did when we got there. And you know, you talk about like the barrier, right? Like we started having people coming back to us and saying, you know, there was a Chase down the street, and they were like, Chase isn't cashing our checks. And because they started to question where these checks were coming from, and we had to go down to Chase and be like, cash these motherfuckers' checks. Like, no, you motherfuckers cash these people's checks. And you know, like, just like the audacity of it, that the people that are, because first of all, Chase was never in that community, right? And when it started to get a little gentrified, that's when Chase showed up, right? And this is like 10 years ago. So like, imagine what it looks like now, right? And so like the non-honoring of the people that you're going into, don't get me started. But you know, so like, just in that way of being able to pour into the community, and like, what I will say is you can see Brownsville as a character in that film as a result of the work that we did in like bringing the people of that community into our space. And we were just really lucky to have that resonate on screen in the ways that it did.
I wanted to jump into just talking, and thank you for that, because I think we think about that a lot in documentary of non-extractive storytelling. What does that look like? There's a great group I recommend you looking into. It's called the Documentary Accountability Working Group. They have a whole worksheet on how to tell non-extractive stories. They have practices for thinking of how to pay subjects to be part of it, so we're not extracting stories, lots of great stuff. So look into them. But I kind of, you know, I mean, we're here, most of us talking about independent film, so I do like push back a little bit on the idea of like stats for studio execs, sure, because we have stats. They know them, right? Like 1 in 5 Americans have a disability, $3 trillion of buying power the disabled population has worldwide. And, you know, in a GLAAD, we are in TV study, still 3% of people on screen have a disability, and even less of that 3% were actually played by disabled actors. Right. And we have no data on behind the camera. And that representation is even less. So, you know, and we've been making, and we will continue to make the case it's not a lost cause, but what I see here in looking at all of these filmmakers are people that are intentional practices of community and care, and I see that in the independent space. And we have the films that break through, right, that are made when they are intentional, when they are actually reflective of the community that they're representing. You know, like, there's a film, Good Bad Things, premiered at Slam Dance, I think 2 years ago, won Slam Dance, and went on to play 50 theaters around the country for a year, and got picked up by Hulu at the end. It was produced and starred by a disabled actor and producer, multiple disabled producers. And that was by generating the audiences, connecting with the community, making accessible screenings. And that distribution came, and to your point, it's reflective in the work. So I would rather see us put our energy into our community practices, into each other, into making more of these films, than trying to convince a studio and a commercial sector that's constricting to try on why they should include us. We're already doing it. We're making great work. Let's build it for ourselves and make them come to us.
Right. Yeah, we're not responsible for fixing their broken system.
Exactly.
Love that. We are about to wrap, but I want to give each of you sort of a moment to talk about what's giving you the most hope right now. And I feel like we've already kind of named some of that, but sort of what's giving you the most hope about the systems that can be in place, the care that can be shown. Apoorva, I loved how you talked about how the crew and the folks that were involved like influenced the story. And at New America, we have data to show that audiences want to see these more nuanced stories. We know that 63% of viewers in the US want to see more stories about illness and disability on screen. They want to see people who look different than themselves, who come from income levels that are different from themselves, who have family structures that are different than their own. And so much of that shows up in indie filmmaking. And sometimes that indie filmmaking gets picked up by other platforms. So just want to, leave it to each of you to sort of give a closing thought of hope in a time that sometimes feels really hard, but also celebration here for many of you. We can start with you. Yeah. Go for it.
I was just gonna say, you know, this is our first time here at Sundance, and even just being surrounded by, you know, independent filmmakers and creators has, you know, given me a lot of hope. I've run into so many first-time filmmakers, first-time Sundancers, in institutions like this who give the opportunity for the people outside of this system, including us, where we didn't really have any connections to the traditional studio system, gives me hope that there are organizations and groups of people and communities that are still pushing this forward, and that there's something really beautiful about that, and that we're lifting each other up.
Yeah, and to add to that, I want to recognize, in the crowd, if you're with freelance, could you raise your hand? Everybody with freelance.
Nice.
This is a direct reflection of how we believe we treat our people on set. We have cast, crew, producers, extras, wardrobe, sound, actors, everybody here that have come and we didn't ask them to. And it's a reflection of the community that we've been building for the last 10, 12 years, to be able to continue to scale story and take the long route is extremely encouraging to be in this room right now, but also to be looking into a crowd like this and to be in a space where we are surrounded by the community that we built. And so, yeah, I think that's the super makes it super hopeful.
Amazing. Yeah. Who else? I'll go to you.
I think the space to have conversations like this, I think this is where culture starts to shift, right? When we're all having these open conversations. And then I would say that the collective power of artists, we can really do anything. And I think as long as the intentions are formed, I want to say the collective power of artists.
Nice. Cassidy, and then I'll go to Chanelle. Give you the last word.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to end us on a good one, so I'll go before you. I don't want to go after you. I would say that, it's been, especially in nonprofit arts and independent film and documentary, it's been a rough year, right? For communities, for our communities, for the way that films are made, the way that films are funded. We see a lot of people being overly cautious, all these things, money, not going to the places that it used to, not going to the communities that it used to, and the filmmakers. And that all seems very bleak, but what I have seen in this past year is things like Solidarity House, our communities willing to work together more, not digging in their heels and saying, I need to work in a silo over here and make sure I'm protecting what I have. That I have seen my community look to each other, and I have built more community relationships, I feel like, in this past year than I have in the 15 years in the industry in such a short amount of time. And I think it's because it's a collective understanding that no one of us is going to survive this or get through this together. It is only together and in solidarity and community that we do that. And I feel like lots of people have been saying that for a long time and we're not listened to, and now people are finally listening. So I do see more people willing to come together, putting egos aside, putting organizational... I mean, we still have to compete for funds, but it doesn't feel like a competition as much. It feels like, oh shit, we gotta do this together, and that gives me hope, because there's a lot that we're facing. And, we just had a filmmaker that went to Minneapolis last week and was like, I need help. How do we do this? So I reached out to a partner organization and some filmmakers in Chicago that have been shooting in Chicago, and connecting them together to have support, how to get insurance, how to get connected with crew in Minneapolis so they can be on the ground covering what is happening right now. And that can only happen by sharing resources and contacts with each other. So
amazing. Well, thank you for your help there, for sure. Chanelle.
I'm going to zoom in and then zoom out. So the zoom in is that we all individually trusting our own voices, and what that means in terms of in relationship to our own bodies, in relationship to our spirituality, and in whatever ways that spirituality looks like, and in relation to how we talk to ourselves. Like, that is probably the biggest amount of care that we can exert. right? And when we're feeling good in that, grounded in that, in the ways in which then we can kind of understand and see each other in this collective and believe that, like, it's one thing, like, I can say this all day long, but if I'm not living it, right? If you're not actually seeing me practice it, right? Like, we are storytellers, right? So, and we're filmmakers. So show me, don't tell me, right? And so, like, in the ways in which we get to do that collectively, like, at Kashif, we don't use words like marginalized and underrepresented. Marginalized in relation to fucking who, right? Like, we're visionaries, right? We're purposeful. We understand the possibility, right? And, like, Solidarity House gives us the space to hear each other, to connect with each other, and, like, each one of us gets to now, you know, in the different ways that, like, I've learned so much, right? My equilibrium has been moved so much that, like, just even, like, how I want to engage with my neighborhood chat looks different right now, you know? And like, we just, those, like, those little incremental steps that we can take will add up. And the last thing that I will say is that Kashif exists because I told someone with a lot of means no. And instead of that person closing the door, they opened up the door for more conversation. And at the end of that conversation, which was like a year long of, like, emails going back and forth, they were like, what can I do for you? Right? But they wanted, what they had asked of me before was very small, and it felt like I was crossing a line that I couldn't cross. And I said the most difficult note in my whole entire life. And that opened up the door for me to get millions of dollars in investment in an organization that we didn't even understand, that, like, the amount of money that was given to us was, like, huge. Like, we didn't understand that because that's how we came out the gate. I am not special, y'all. Right? And I'm really fucking special. So I'll leave it there, because that's what we all are.
Thank you so much. This has been an amazing, amazing panel, and I think just such a reflection of the values that Solidarity House was meant to bring to this festival. So I'm going to read the language that has come at the end of every panel here, which creates a thread that has bound together the last 2 days of programming. So thank you again for joining this session at Solidarity House. This has been organized by a coalition of over 50 movement builders within and surrounding the independent film community. We invite you to hold close a reminder that solidarity across infrastructure means recognizing that our organizations are stronger when we share knowledge, pool resources, and coordinate strategy across the ecosystem. I think this panel really underscored all of those points in pretty profound and moving ways. So as we exit, please introduce yourself to 2 new people and share 2 new things. First, I know, we have to talk to people we don't know. It's scary. But everybody here is really nice, and, like, half of them are from freelance. So you maybe they seem really nice. So first, share your most urgent, accomplishable dream. And second, a challenge that you're currently facing. But the challenge here is really interesting. You can make one ask and one offer of support, but make those of different people. So we're not engaging in transactions that are back and forth, but instead are paying it forward and are community building. Ask for something from one person, offer something to the next, and trust that in solidarity, community is caring for all. So please check out the schedule. We're close to closing this incredibly special place out. I really want to give a shout out to Emily Best and Jessica and the Seed and Spark team, and Brenna, who has run this, to OTV, to Kinema, to all the partners that are here, to my colleague Jasmine, who coordinated this panel and had the vision to put it together. You can scan QR codes from around the room to learn more about the space, or go to thesolidarityhouse.com, and let's stay connected and continue to build. So thank y'all. Enjoy the rest of the festival.